Welcome to AM Joy. As of this morning, more than 930,000 Americans have tested positive for COVID-19. And in a little over a month, the death toll in the United States has gone from 41 reported deaths on March 15th to more than 53,000 today. The number of unemployed Americans has also skyrocketed, with an additional 4.4 million new unemployment claims just this week, bringing the 5-week total to more than 26 million. Meanwhile, Congress has passed yet another relief bill which replenishes the Paycheck Protection Program for small businesses and allocates more funding for hospitals and testing. Critics of the bill say it doesn't go far enough. The bill leaves out crucial funding for state and city governments, SNAP benefits, and rent relief, to name a few. And without that funding, state and local governments are bracing for, and in some cases already enacting, major layoffs and budget cuts that could impact essential services. Congress is already looking toward the next relief bill. While back at the White House, Donald Trump skipped out on his daily campaign rally, disguised as a press briefing on Saturday for the first time in 2 weeks. Trump, of course, blamed the media for his absence in a tweet, but new NBC reporting tells a pretty different story. The White House is considering reducing Trump's briefing appearances. Apparently, aides are concerned the briefings are backfiring politically, especially after the president suggested people ingest disinfectants to cure COVID-19, forcing companies like the makers of Lysol to issue warnings to please not ingest their products. After Trump's disinfectant comments, which he later tried to rewrite as sarcastic, despite the fact that the entire exchange with his scientific team during the opening part of his briefing were on tape. New York City Poison Control Center reported that calls about exposure to bleach, Lysol, and other household cleaners more than doubled. Joining me now is Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Speaker Pelosi, good morning, and thanks for being here.
Good morning. My pleasure. I wish I were under different circumstances.
I do indeed as well. And, Madam Speaker, this is an extraordinary circumstance that we're seeing in which a president of the United States has had to walk back and pretend that he did not suggest that the American people ingest disinfectants and shine UV light on themselves, which could burn people. And that the White House is scrambling to pretend that that wasn't real when we all saw that happen on live TV. As Speaker of the House, can you just comment on the seriousness of what we've seen happen and what's coming out of Donald Trump's mouth these days?
The Speaker of the House, and as a mom and a grandmother, I just want to say how sad it all is. The numbers are staggering in terms of the infections, but also, of course, the deaths. So serious. Every family, a tragedy. And yet we have these comments coming out of the White House. The president has been irresponsible, and we have insisted on the truth. He said it was a hoax. He said it would go away magically. He said all kinds of things that were not true. And people believe him. He's the president of the United States. The president's words have weight. So now that he's gone to this limit, at least it means that lots of scientists and medical professionals have come forth and said, no, he has gone too far this time. As I said, as a mom and a grandmother, I'm embarrassed sometimes about how the president talks. He's crude in that, and you don't want children to hear that. But this is dangerous. This is dangerous. So, Speaker, we have put forth 4 bills in a bipartisan way to help take us into the future, ignoring some of his comments, instead paying attention to science, evidence, data, fact, and truth, insisting on the truth.
Let's talk about those bills. We do know that there has been this next bite, and we know that there are going to be further bills. But in the current relief bill, here are some of the highlights of the bill for the audience. The Paycheck Protection Program has been renewed with $320 billion in fresh funding, $75 billion for hospitals and healthcare workers, providers, economic injury disaster loan fund of $60 billion, and COVID-19 testing $25 billion. However, yesterday we had Bishop William Barber on the show, and he talked about some of the things that in his mind did not make it into the bill, and that he and others hope will get into the next one. Take a listen to that.
Where's the permanent sick leave? Where is the salary protection? Where is the rent forgiveness? Where is the guarantee of that utilities can't be shut off? Where is the money for undocumented workers and the homeless? Where is the direct money for those communities, people of color, that are being hurt the most, and poor communities like up in Appalachia and Kentucky? Joy, what we're making a fundamental mistake, because the scientists tell us, the data tells us that pandemic spread through the fissures of this society. And these type bills are a dereliction of duty. It says that too many people are still too comfortable with too many other people's deaths.
Well, what is your response to that, Madam Speaker?
Well, I'm a great admirer of his, and we stay in constant contact, and I've been on calls and listened to stories from, and he's absolutely right. We have to have many more things in this, and we did in CARES 1, and we were preparing for CARES 2 when along came this intervention. And I really wish that people would understand better what Maxine Waters and Nydia Velasquez, Maxine, the chair of the Financial Services Committee, and the Small Business Committee chair, Nydia Velasquez, put into this bill to take it from a place of $250 first come, first serve from the banks to community development financial institutions now being able to lend to those who previously had been underbanked. They don't have sophisticated relationships with banks. So this was a specific interim bill, and we changed it from PPP, which we all support, and we wanted to renew that, however, not without removing the hardening of the disparity to access to credit for so many of the underbanked, some of whom the Reverend mentioned there. It's hard to understand, but we will get it in the next bill, why we couldn't get SNAP in this bill. SNAP, that's the food stamp program. First of all, it's a moral thing to do. Second of all, people need it. And third of all, it's a stimulus to the economy. In CARES 1, and we will do it again in CARES 2 in our bills, we have had legislation about evictions and mortgage foreclosure and the rest. So that agenda is our agenda as well. Some of it will be possible, some not now, and depending on the timing. The president said he would do state and local. This bill we wanted to just do and move on. Chuck Schumer fought very hard in the Senate, as I did in the House, but he, being the senators, they speak from a state perspective, he fought very, very hard for state and local in the bill that we did. And they said, you're having another bill, we'll do it then. And we will. And we will do it in a significant way. And why we will succeed is because the governors, Democrats and Republicans, are insisting upon it. They have made outlays for the coronavirus that are extraordinary, and they have lost revenue, and we want that covered because of the coronavirus. We want that covered too. They say state and local, let's say our heroes, our healthcare workers, our first responders, our police, our fire, our transportation workers, our emergency services, our postal service, our food folks, all of the people who make our lives possible, many of them risking their lives in order to save lives, and now they're in danger of losing their jobs. So that's what, when we say state and local, we're talking about jobs in the front line of the coronavirus, and that's what Chuck fought for to ensure that we would get it as soon as possible. The president, understand, you have to have a signature from the White House. The president says he's going to do it now, and we take him at his word. But not only that, we are advocating in a bipartisan way, governors, mayors, Democrats and Republicans, to make sure that happens. SNAP for sure, rent assistance, the list, everything is impacted here. And we have to, again, working with our friends in labor, talk about safety in the workplace, job security, pension security. We have an array of concerns that are the priorities of all of us, and we have to get as much of it as possible. But understand, we're two different parties. They do not share many of our values or our beliefs. So we just have to get
Right.
the public as engaged as possible in that, and I always welcome the beautiful values-based statements of the Reverend.
Yeah, and to that very point, because I think that it is clear that the parties are markedly different in terms of values and in terms of what they value, what each party values, and obviously Donald Trump has Mitch McConnell fighting for what it is that he wants. I think for a lot of people, the question is whether or not Democrats have at any point said to Mitch McConnell, said to the White House, look, this is what we're doing. We want there to be, for instance, we've heard doctors and first responders say, they'd love to have loan forgiveness. They have crushing educational loans in a lot of cases. People who are in places like Appalachia, people who are poor are saying, some benefits would be good here too. Gig economy workers, et cetera, need help. And make the Republicans say no, and make them say no publicly and make them pay the price for it. Well, what do you make of that argument?
Well, a couple things. First of all, we do have to recognize that there are those who have debt, need some debt forgiveness or some percentage of it. But we also need, some people do not have a school debt or that, but they are in a hazardous situation, and we will have hazard pay. Chuck Schumer is taking the lead on that in the United States Senate, and that is a priority for us on both sides of the aisle. What I said to some of my, shall we say, our impatient, relentless, persistent, dissatisfied advocates, and that's what advocates are, what I said to them is, one thing we have to do is just curate, prioritize what we must have, recognizing that we have to have the public with us on this. And I've said this to them on any number of occasions, you have to be ready to walk. You have to just say, I'm ready to walk. Now, what is how do you weigh the equities in that? What do you lose? I had concerns that they were not sufficiently committed to collecting the data so that we could see the disparity in how this was hitting, coronavirus was hitting communities of color and the rest. I just said, I can't even get the votes for that. That's one way to say you're going to walk. So anyway, we got that in the bill.
Right. Well, let me ask you a couple of other specifics, because I think that's a really good point of what is the politics of the possible here. We know now, coming out of Wisconsin, that there have been 40 coronavirus cases that have been directly linked to Milwaukee County and the forcing of voters, in a lot of cases, urban voters, black voters, to stand in line to vote. Senator Kamala Harris was on this program yesterday discussing her Vote Save Act that she is right now getting co-sponsors for to try to protect the vote in November. What's the status of trying to get election protection and also help for the post office, which would be tied to that, and making sure the post office is not defunded because there are a lot of people who are worried that we won't have a free and fair and safe election in November?
Well, we talk about this whole coronavirus challenge in three ways. The lives of the American people, their livelihood in terms of the economy, and the life of our democracy. This is very important for us. We have $400 million in CARES 1. We wanted more. We had put in $2 billion, but we wanted more. And we even maybe need more than that, depending on the spread of how long this persists. So it is very essential. It is essential that we can vote by mail. And we had in our bill, since I'm glad you asked about this, because we had in our House Democratic bill that we sent over to the Senate, we had requirements that states must send an absentee ballot to every registered voter, that they should have same-day registration, other opportunities to remove obstacles of participation. Instead, they took down the number. They took it way down. We got it back up to 400 million, which is a good start, but just a start, a down payment. And then they put in order for the states to participate in receiving those funds, they had to put up like 20% of it themselves. Well, forget that. Not only should they forget it, not only should I say that, but the National Association of Secretaries of State, which is bipartisan, led by a Republican, wrote to us to say, get that requirement out of the bill. And there's some other bad things too. They're not, it's unworkable. You're not going to be able to use the money if you have to pay to get it. So this is important. And what happened in Wisconsin was unconscionable on the part of the United States Supreme Court. They turned themselves into party hacks. Party hacks. The court had said the election had to take place on that day. The lower court, they also said, though, there should be consideration for more time, et cetera, for getting and counting absentee ballots. Supreme Court even reversed that. I mean, they stuck with, you can't do the election you have to do the election that day, but no accommodation. And why? Because they had a political purpose. Disgraceful. However, under the leadership of Ben Winkler, chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party and the Democratic establishment there, and the messaging that went out to the public, they won the election, thank God. But they taught us a lot of things about voter protection. And actually what the Supreme Court of the United States said to the state of Wisconsin is, why don't we all just go to the Mardi Gras together so we can all be contaminated? Having those people stand in those lines for those hours, having to interact with people in the polling place unnecessarily was terrible. But in any event, they won, thank God. And they won a lot of it with the absentee ballots.
Yeah, indeed. No, indeed. And in a rare case, absentee ballots actually went more Democratic than Republican. On a couple other issues, one of them is the incarcerated population. We know that a lot of that population is federal. And there is a concern that this could be a fresh source of outbreak and that there could actually be a disaster for incarcerated people because of this virus. Is anything being considered for the next bill to deal with that?
Well, in our caucus, we are very devoted to the Gospel of Matthew. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was homeless, you sheltered me. When I was in prison, you visited me. And so this for us is a part of our value system. And especially under the leadership of our Congressional Black Caucus, Karen Bass, Barbara Lee, and others, there has been a real focus on this. We will have language being developed by the Judiciary Committee to have some order and clarity so that some people can leave who really don't need to be there, but some clarity because what the administration is doing is confusing and not clear, but it must be addressed. It must be addressed. It's so very, very sad, but again, a priority for us. Again, everything should be about the truth. I'm saying insist on the truth. Absolutely. What are the numbers? Let's find out. Let's find out what this is. What are the facts? What is the science of this, of these people being together there unnecessarily in many cases, some of them having served enough of a sentence to leave, but in any event, whatever it is, that they be protected, that their health be protected. It shouldn't be a risk of life. And so let's enlarge the issue from there. We want to protect everyone, and we want it to be something that knows no economic, legal, ethnic, racial difference. And that's why we're very proud of what we put into this bill that people are saying it didn't do enough in there. But we did get the mobile, Mr. Clyburn, our distinguished whip, was very much about getting the mobility out there to test and to trace and the rest. But again, let's just come back.
Right.
Science, science, science. Testing, testing, testing. Tracing, tracing, tracing. Isolation. Treatment, prevention for everyone, because that's the right thing to do, but it's also the safest thing to do. And
Indeed, Madam Speaker, and hopefully we'll also
insist on the truth. Give us the facts. Insist on the truth and ignore some of what the president's saying. But I'll tell you what the public wants us to see. They want to see our heroes protected. And so that's part of our thrust as we go in for the state and local. They want their checks, their unemployment check, their direct payment check. They want their this small business check, and they don't want any of our money, any taxpayers' money, being squandered by big industries who get this money The money is to be spent to keep people in jobs and not for
Indeed.
enriching shareholders, buybacks, dividends, bonuses, CEO pay, or any of that. There are three things that in what we're doing, we're very proud, and here's one, to take it from corporate down, trickle down to worker first, bubble up. And that's what we did in the next bill by saying, if we're going to do more on small business, we have to recognize what the small businesses are. Women, minority, Native American, rural, veteran-owned businesses that have not had the
Yep.
same access. And we must have hospital and testing to the tune of $100 billion. So we think we accomplished a lot
Yeah.
in that few days between the ask and the passage of the bill. But we're already
Indeed. Well,
for the
Madam
CARES
Speaker,
too.
I hope to have you back on. We are running up against a break, but I want to thank you for being here. Hopefully, we bring you back and also talk about what's going to be done regarding, we know there are a lot of migrants who are still, we have no idea how many are incarcerated. We'd love to get more information on that as well and what's being done about that population. But Speaker Nancy Pelosi, thank you so much for your time. Please stay safe.
Thank you, Joy. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. And coming up, thank you very much. And coming up next, former presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke joins me to talk about the